Okay, so we're back with my uncle's escaped Alcatraz. Today I'm flying solo because Cindy's on a very important call relating to Alcatraz, which we hopefully will be able to reveal to you later. But we wanted to kind of recap the last 2 weeks, which have been pretty amazing. If you haven't listened to it or seen it yet, we dropped two interviews, part one and part two of Ken interviewing his mom about everything that he could possibly think of. I mean, he's talked to her for years about her uncles and what happened to them after the escape, what happened to them before the escape, all the details. And he did an amazing job kind of just chronicling everything that they talk about the book. But we got to hear it from Ken's mom's mouth, which I think is really important. And, it's like, and I think it's super important that it was memorialized in that way. So you have it forever. And, that's one thing, she remembered so much. And so Ken, just tell me a little bit about, and then I'll go with Ken first, and what that experience was like. Was it different from the last times that you've spoken to her about? Did you learn anything new? Did she drop any kind of bombshells on you? I mean, because I heard some new stuff, from reading the book and us talking about it for, 32 episodes. I definitely heard some other interesting stuff.
Yeah, it was kind of, interesting for me, even after listening to her stories and my aunts and uncles talk about different stories about Johnny Clarence and Alfred, for her to kind of bring up some things that I'm like scratching my head going, well, over the last 50, 60 years, I haven't ever heard you say this before. So it was kind of refreshing to me too, just to kind of listen to some new stuff. And that was kind of like true with her. Sometimes, even when I was young, she would tell me something, and then the next time she told me, she would add something to it that she remembered. And so that was what was kind of interesting. I love hearing her tell the story about her brothers. And like I said, growing up, that's all she ever talked about was John and Clarence. And it was true anytime the Anglin family got together, either with us coming down and visiting my grandma and grandfather and the other Anglin members, or if we had an Anglin family reunion, which they have once a year, still have it today. People eventually, my aunts and uncles would bring up John and Clarence, and someone would say something or tell a story about something that one of them did, either as a kid or a teenager, or, after they got in trouble, just different parts about their lives. And I just remember hearing all of these stories, and it's kind of amazing that I remembered most of them. So,
yeah. Mike, how about you? I mean, obviously, is this the first time you've actually heard Ken's mom speak?
Not the first time. Well, first time live or recorded live. The first time that I saw her was when Ken did the show back in 2015, where at the end of the show they go back to her house and they go over. Art Roderick goes over all the information. So that was my first introduction to her. Mm-hmm. But the thing that I was pleased about was, as Ken and I were working on the book, doing research, and he was sharing these stories that his mother had told him over the years, mm-hmm. and how closely they lined up to what Ken said. So Ken remembered them well, and then the mother was recounting them, and they were lining up nicely. It wasn't like Ken said one thing and the mom said something very different. It was the same information. And as Ken said, a few details here and there were added that we didn't really know before. But essentially, the stories were right on line. So we, as far as she remembers, we got it exactly right in the book. So I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah. One of the things that really surprised me when she was talking about when they went and bailed him out at jail, when they went and bailed out Alfred.
That is hilarious. I mean, that to me,
when they're on the run,
right?
They got outstanding warrants, right, and they got the cojones to literally walk in. And that was in Florida, correct? Or was that in Atlanta?
That was in Florida, and that was typical of the stories that I heard about John Clarence and Alfred. Was they They're very bold, not afraid of anything. They were the type of people, like I said, they could go out into the Tampa Bay and they weren't afraid of sharks. I mean, they would swim the Tampa Bay all the way to what they call the Skyway Bridge, and they would swim out into the to the Gulf of Mexico and back. So it was, they had no fear whatsoever.
Yeah.
I get it was just the way they were brought up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. But and also I love just kind of seeing her. You can actually see her kind of recalling a lot of those stories and kind of reliving them.
Right.
Like her eyes are like flashing from left to right, and it must have been. It just gives you. It's both inspiring and also a little eerie. That she can remember all this stuff at the and she's in her 90s, correct?
She is 89. She just turned
89. And
89.
And her sister, is she younger or older?
She is younger, so she's the next in line, so she would be number 11.
Mm-hmm.
And so I believe she is 80, either 87 or 88.
Mm-hmm. And they
all of the children were born almost like within a year of each other.
Yeah, they're all Irish twins.
Yes.
14 Irish twins.
Yes.
That's crazy.
Well, John and Clarence were only like 11 months apart. I mean, they were almost born in the same year.
So your mom was basically pregnant for over a decade.
My grandmother, I remember them joking and saying either she was in the kitchen cooking or she was having babies.
That's crazy. That's crazy. Now, I can't remember if I ever asked this, but is there any other living members from that
No. My mom and her younger sister are the only two left living siblings.
Wow.
Yep.
So
everybody else has passed away, and so capturing their story and whatever they have to say is pretty much going to be the end of it.
It's incredible. It's incredible.
And that's the reason why I've always felt like the time to tell the story and to write this book. I'm not sure who could do it even after I leave, at some point in time. I mean, I'm the one that she shared most of the stories with. So at some point in time, the story is just pretty much going to end. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Well, listen, you did your family justice. I mean, you've created your family Bible about this story, and it's going to live on. But I'm really curious to see. I mean, like we've gotten a lot. I mean, it's this, like I said, there've been Daily Mail articles about this. There's been internet press about this. There's, it always kicks up after a certain period of time anytime Alcatraz is mentioned. But this is the definitive stuff. And, and then for our audience, we're working on quite a few things to try to get this even to a broader audience. And hopefully we'll have some announcements in the new year. But ever since I've read this book and Cindy read the book and we started this podcast, which Ken and Mike thought they were only going to be on like maybe once.
One and done. Yep.
Yeah, we thought it was just once or twice maybe.
And I mean, I can't shake this story until we find out more answers. And the more we dig in and the more people that we get involved in this, as far as, professional investigators, I mean, they get kind of wide-eyed as well. And so I think there's still a lot of answers to a lot of questions that we need. Had a conversation, Stuart Fillmore called us the other night, unrelated to your case, but regarding to, because he's a Kennedy JFK assassination aficionado. He's been looking into that, and he actually found some really interesting facts and evidence regarding the two-shooter theory that he was showing to us. And then I had to remind him that there's a connection to the Alcatraz case with some of the members that are related to the JFK assassination too. Like we talked about the Candy Bar and the Jack Ruby, who was friends with Candy Bar, and the Mickey Cohen connection, and the Oswald connection that was reported in the thing, and he didn't know about that. So he was just like floored about that. So he's going down another rabbit hole right now.
Poor
But
man.
no, he was like, for guys like that, and for people that, he's a trained investigator, and that is just more fuel to to kind of look into, and because it's fascinating, and it's going to be fascinating to see what's going to happen if they actually do roll out that information, as the President-elect Trump said, and he promised RFK Jr. He says he's going to let him have at it. So that's going to be really interesting, and whether or not that the exposing and unearthing that file, does that give us an opportunity? Does that give us an opportunity to get other files that we weren't able to? Because
it's going to be interesting to see if the FBI files match up to the Warren Commission, because
I was also I'm talking about for our case for Alcatraz. If they start releasing those files, does that allow us to kind of make another request through a kind of new FBI management and transparency platform that allows us to see the stuff that we haven't been able to see?
Right, and that's what I was thinking, is that, one, I don't believe that the FBI files will match up to the Warren Commission. I believe that the FBI files are going to identify Jack Ruby and Oswald coming out of Mexico. I believe they're going to identify Mickey Cohen in this FBI file, which is going to match up to what we know is in the FBI files for Alcatraz. So to me, I would love to see President Trump, when he gets into office, not only release the JFK files, I would love for him to release the FBI files on Alcatraz.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping.
To me, that case should already be closed off right now. If they really truly believe that they've drowned and there's nothing else to find, there's nothing else, then release the files. If nothing else, to release them to us three so that we can go through them.
Yeah, I mean, because unlike the JFK, I mean, the I don't know what the blowback would be. I mean, the JFK thing, which there's all these speculations about, obviously, the head of the CIA at the time, along with LBJ, and that it was definitely a staged coup. That's the big dirty secret that no one wants to talk about. That they think that'll earth shatter democracy. I think we're so beyond that at that point.
Right.
I think, if it did something like that happen, I mean, then, it is what it is. It's in the rearview mirror now,
right.
As is this. So any kind of mistakes that are made with the Alcatraz investigation is, nobody's alive that can be prosecuted for this.
No.
Or, I mean, they named an airport after that head of the CIA in Washington, D.C., so it's like, it's all in the rearview mirror. So I just, to me, I don't understand why they
I've never understood why they don't want to release it. No, I would probably say 99% of the people in those files have already passed away, dead. I mean, do they really believe that they're going to catch John and Clarence and Frank Morris at this point in time? Do they really believe, even if one of them was alive today, do they really believe they're going to take them and put them back into prison? I mean, come on.
Well, yeah, even Art said that nothing would happen to them.
No,
nothing.
Release the files. Let us have them. Give back to the family all of the letters, all of the photos that you have, and close the case. I mean, it's time for the case to be closed and everything revealed to the public. Period.
Yeah, it just.
One of the things that's remarkable to me about this story, just in general, kind of pulling back a little bit, is you have two men who grew up in Ruskin, Florida. At the time, there were only a few hundred people living there. It was a farming community. Had been there for 100 years or so. And before that, it was Indian land. And these were just small-time criminals who just did little petty thefts here and there. They went to jail. They didn't really do much. They were not violent men. They never hurt anyone. They just wanted money to kind of live a better life. We've talked about that. And through a series of circumstances, they rob a bank, they go eventually to Alcatraz, and they start rubbing shoulders with very important people. The Kennedys are involved in their lives, not directly, but indirectly. They meet Cohen, they meet Whitey Bulger, they meet Bumpy Johnson, who are all at Alcatraz at the same time. And then through them, they connect to other people, Oswald, Jack Ruby, indirectly, who are, touching their lives, and how much we don't know. That's speculated about, or is that information in the FBI files, the records as well. When they were in Mexico, who did they see in Mexico? What happened in Mexico? Does it touch on the Kennedy assassination indirectly? Did they see them down there possibly? It's just amazing to me. You have these two men who are just very common farmers who are thrust into the national stage, commit this incredible escape or execute this escape. And 60 years later, we're still talking about it. Clint Eastwood did a movie about it. Many, many books are written about the escape in Alcatraz, many, many documentaries. We're pursuing more options in that regard. The story won't die. There's just something about it that has taken a hold of it. People are so fascinated, we have our Facebook page that's dedicated to the Alcatraz escape, and people in different parts of the world are commenting on the podcast and what they're learning through what we're talking about, what we're revealing. It has interest. On our website that we have for the Alcatraz book, you can look at the metrics of who's logging in, who's checking into the website. And for some reason, Australia is interested in Alcatraz. Almost half of the people logging or going onto our website are from Australia, of all places.
Well, it was a prison island. It was a prison colony.
Yeah,
there's just something about this at one time.
and so that to me is just remarkable. It starts off so small and it becomes this big thing that just keeps going.
Yeah. Well, what I wanted to ask both of you is that if they do, what you've guys gone through all the FBI files that you have that have been redacted and stuff like that
many times.
So what do you think they're holding back on, and what do you think if it does, and how much of it is it, and do you think it's a lot more, or is it you just think it's selective things that just, to me, the only reason to hold back on information like that has nothing to do with sources or methods?
Well, I will tell you this. So what really kind of turned me on to the FBI files, and I had a copy of them in 2012 when, at that time, U.S. Marshal Michael Dykes gave me a copy, which I thought he was giving me something that no one else had. I didn't know that you could go out onto the internet and download them at that time for free. But anyway, regardless, so I had them all for all the way up into 2015 when we did the History Channel documentary, and I never really kind of read them that much. I skimmed over them. It wasn't until Art Roderick, we're sitting at a German bar, me and him, and we're drinking beer and we're getting ready to do one of the last shoots. And I told you he always had this vision of us doing the show where we would have this big white chalkboard and we would draw lines from different theories or different things that were in the FBI files. And he told me, he said, Ken, the answer to what you're seeking is in those files, in those FBI files. Mm-hmm. And now he has an unredacted copy. And I said, really? He goes, I'm telling you, the answer is there.
And what answer is he referring to?
I don't know. I wasn't sure exactly what he meant by that. But that's when I really said, okay, I'm going to go back through and really read the files. And the very first time I ever went through, I was like, oh my gosh, I had more questions than I had any answers, because I would come across things that I would go, what in the hell are they saying here? And then it would be redacted. And I was just blown away by some of the stuff that it started off and you could read, and then it would become redacted. And I'm going, okay, I want to know more about what's being said here. And of course, I was able to get some things through the Freedom of Information Act. Like, for instance, the letter that someone wrote to J. Edgar Hoover early on in one of the volumes, where he's talking about, someone leaving the island early, and he was talking about a boat, and a lot of the things were redacted. For some reason, I was able to get a hold of that, and turns out it was an FBI, a former FBI special agent who had written J. Edgar Hoover and said, "Hey, I'm telling you, this is what probably happened. It was someone who left the island early, carried the information off, and probably came back, and they probably had a boat waiting for them." He pretty much was laying out what we discovered in other pieces.
Yep.
I was like going, okay, what else is out there in these files that they don't want us to know? Or at least they won't give us access to them.
Yeah.
Have
And
no
all I can think of is that, Art probably signed some sort of lifetime NDA, as that they all do. I mean, they can't really,
Right.
but, and some of them observe it, some of them don't. There was a guy who I started when I started my career in documentaries. He was a guy named Frank Snepp, and he was a CIA agent in Saigon. And so he was the one who did all the interrogations of the top VC brass. And when he came out, he became a journalist, and he wrote this book that's super thick. And so he was the first one who to really test that, ability for a government official to expose methods and procedures and stuff like that. He went through, he got sued by the CIA and stuff like that. And he eventually came out on top because it's First Amendment rights. And he was just revealing his experiences, which were, he was on the last chopper out of Saigon. And, but that's way more sensitive material than this. And that is out there, and it's been out there for a while. He was the first book who kind of exposed it all. And then, and he references documents, and he has copies of documents and stuff like that, because, at the end of the day, there's no threat to our security in regards to this stuff. That's usually the main reason that, it's either protecting people's reputations, their jobs, but with this, it just, unless they just have it, because J. Edgar Hoover it's just, he has this lockbox that says don't open for the next 100 years. And, that's all I can think of, is that there's a time capsule type thing here, but there's no benefit for them to sit on this material at this point in time, which just really, and that's the thing that was getting kind of cagey when we were talking to Art, because he would agree with a lot of the stuff that we were talking about, and the hypothesis that you and Mike have basically through all the facts that you've kind of garnered, but that he would go back to his standard, statement of they died in the bay, they never made it.
Well, it's the same way with Art when we brought up Alfred, and where they had never interviewed Alfred, and then he claims, well, they did, and it's in the files, but it's not in the files. And then he says, well, I've read it, but where have you read it? Because we've never seen it. I mean, there are pieces in the FBI files that has Alfred's name unredacted because he had already died when they released the files. So everything about Alfred has been unredacted. Well, if there is an interview out there that they did with Alfred, it would have been unredacted. And it's not in there. So
I couldn't tell you what that interview what was the substance of that interview? No,
and that's my whole point, is that Art would go back and forth. He would say, "Oh yeah, it's there," but then you ask him, "Well, where is it at?" And he would say, "Oh, well, I can't share that with you," And so it's the same way with the letters and the photos. For the longest time, Art used to tell me that they don't know, that the FBI, or not the FBI, but the U.S. Marshals don't know what happened to the letters or to the photos. But then whenever I confronted him with, well, Marshall Dyke gave me a copy of one of the letters in 2012. So you had it then, then it became, oh, well, we got it, but we can't share it with you. And I'm like going, well, why? And he was like, well, it's because it's evidence. It's correspondence between the family and the prisoners. And I was like, well, then why didn't you come get the letters that they wrote the family? Because that's correspondence too, right? And then he was like, well, that doesn't mean anything.
But the word evidence, when you're withholding it, means that there's going to be some sort of case.
Yes.
So it's like they're not, and that's the sticky, that's the sticky term that they use all the time. Police and investigators, they said, well, we can't share anything to you because it's still under investigation. And that's how and rightly so. I mean, if it's a hot investigation, but this is 60 years later. They're not looking for them. They haven't been looking for them for a long time. And we've even had Art on record saying that if they were alive and they did find them, nothing would happen to them. It would just, moving on. It would be closing a chapter. So them saying it's evidence I think it's a wrong way to phrase it. It's not evidence. Because
either we're going to have to wait until John and Clarence turn 99, or I'm going to go back down the road of trying to have them pardoned, and that would close the case basically. Then there would be no case, right, to try them on.
Yeah.
So I tried that one time, and my congressman, which I thought he knew what he was talking about at the time. He told me, because I was like, okay, I want you to help me try to get them pardoned. And he said, well, we can pardon them for the bank robbery, but we can't pardon them from escaping because you have to be caught and tried before you can be pardoned for something. And so I always took that as, okay, well, you can't pardon someone for something they haven't done yet or been tried and convicted yet. And so that makes sense until our president right now, gave a pardon for something that hasn't even happened yet. So I'm like going, well, then what you told me isn't true.
Yeah.
Because you can pardon something that hasn't been charged yet.
Yes. Or convicted of.
So I'm going to go back now and say, hey, that's not what you told me was not true.
Yeah.
I want to pursue and see.
The good news is we've spoken to Pam Bondi before.
Oh, so, I would love to talk to her.
Yeah, because she's going to be the one that's going to be heading up the DOJ.
Right.
And so that's going to be interesting to see if we can get her, because we have friends of ours who are pretty high profile attorneys down in Florida. And we were talking to her about another case that we were working on while, she was the head of what was she, the Attorney General then?
Attorney General of Florida.
Yeah. Right. But it's going to be interesting now to see what we're going to be able to have access to, making new requests on a new administration that hopefully is going to be more transparent. And also because, they're talking about Kash Patel, who's going to take over for Christopher Wray. And he's talking about pretty much an overhaul of the.
Well, I wrote a lengthy request to the current Attorney General, and months and months and months ago. Now, I've never heard anything back from my request.
Well, here's the clue you have to do. You have to, a friend of mine who was wrongfully convicted, someone that Cindy went to high school with, he spent on his 18th birthday, senior year in high school, he wakes up and both of his parents are brutally murdered. He gets fingered by it. And, it was his father's business partner who basically killed him and his mother because he owed him money. And he was in cahoots with the local police department. So they kind of covered it up and they fingered, and he spent 18 years in prison before he was released. No one would look at his case. No one would look at it. He wrote 30,000 letters and finally got a PI to look at it. And that PI actually not only helped him, but found the murder weapon, found new evidence and new witnesses after 18 years. And he was able to get exonerated after all that time. Now he spends his time. We did a whole documentary about it, where he both for television. Then now he's a Georgetown professor, and he's teaching kids how to look into wrongful convictions and trying to turn over new evidence and stuff like that, and work with the Innocence Project and stuff like that. But yeah, it took that many letters before someone kind of took notice. So I think,
well, I've written a lot of letters. I've written them to the FBI director, to the Attorney General, congressmen, senators, FBI. Could never get the office in San Francisco.
Well, maybe we'll help you write letters. So if they get it from a bunch of different people.
Well,
although the one thing we
any help would be helpful.
When Amanda came on, she was the one that works for the Archive Center in San Francisco. Is she sent us that list of what they did receive from the FBI when they closed the case, and sent it to the archives. And one of the things that was not on the list was the everything that was contained in the pouch: the photographs, the address, the list of names. It lists everything else that they did get, but not that. So the only other place it would be is with the marshals, because the FBI closed it and gave what they had to the marshals.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the last stopping point as far as we can track down.
Well, and like I said, when we met with U.S. Marshal Dykes in 2012, he gave us a scanned copy of the last letter that my grandmother wrote to Clarence.
Mm-hmm.
And, no one in the family even knew it existed. Because she wrote it and mailed it on June 11th, the day of the escape, or the night, the day of the escape. So it shows up weeks later, a week or so later, after they had already left. So the authorities had this letter all this time. We never knew it existed. And the only way we knew it existed is Marshal Dyke gave us a copy of it. And I mean, you can tell that he used the Xerox copy to copy it.
Yeah.
So my question is, if he's got that one, then undoubtedly he has the rest of it.
Yeah.
I don't know. Makes no sense why they feel like they need to hang even that letter. I mean, you can read the letter. I have it today. There's nothing in there that I can tell is any code, but still, it doesn't say anything other than just, hey, we miss you. And they talk about one of my aunts getting married. But so why would you hang on to that letter? Why, if he came to, when we met with him in 2012, why would you just bring us the original? Why would you give us a copy?
He probably couldn't get it either. Or maybe the original doesn't exist. I think Stuart Stuart alluded to this in our podcast, because some of those things become people's trophies. And it might be sitting in a frame somewhere on someone's house and in their office.
You're exactly right.
So Stuart was like, he was right on. He goes, I've walked into people's houses and seen, evidence on people's walls or on their desk.
I guess someone liked my baby picture then. I don't know why they would want my baby picture.
It's bizarre. But, the question is that, who actually is storing this stuff and where is it stored? Because, that's the other thing. It's like, what archives is it? Is it the FBI archives? Is it the U.S. Marshal archives? Is it the DOJ archives? Who do you know? Have you been able to pinpoint where it might be?
No, and that's the strange and crazy thing. So it starts off with the FBI,
mm-hmm.
and then Art tells me that, well, they didn't get anything from the FBI. They only got one piece of paper. You remember him saying that?
Yep.
So then does the FBI have everything? But then we hear from like Amanda, and I've heard from other sources saying, well, it's at the San Francisco Archives, Golden Gate Museum. And okay, so do they have everything? I don't know who has it. Either the FBI has it, the U.S. Marshals have it, or it's at the San Francisco Archives. Somebody has it.
The San Francisco Archives, meaning the one that she runs?
Yeah, correct.
Or are you talking about the San Francisco FBI office?
Well, either one. So either the San Francisco FBI office has it, or the main FBI office has it, which I'm assuming they probably both have it. The U.S. Marshals, or it's the San Francisco archives, Golden Gate Archives group that has it. One of the three has it.
Yeah.
Or it's at someone's house.
Yeah. I mean, I think, a phone call to Amanda would be able to be able to verify that. She'd be able
Well,
to.
she did send us that.
her.
What she did send us the letter, or not a letter. It was a
Inventory.
document that listed all the things that they received from the FBI. It's itemized. I think we've sent it to you, I believe.
I can't remember.
Yeah,
But you know-
and she was very specific because she said that they're very. Now, this is what she said, that they're very careful about when they document because they have all these different records, not just for Alcatraz, but anything that's related to San Francisco history. That they take great care in documenting everything. It's all listed. It's all placed in certain places. They know how to find it, kind of a thing. And she said specifically on the show, because she was recalling the list at the time, that they did not get the pouch documents. They did not receive that. And then she forwarded the list that was dated. I forget what the date was, but and it does itemize everything on there, and the pouch is not listed or its contents. Everything else is that we've seen, the files, the masks, the fake grills, the paints, the paintbrushes, the periscope, all the things that they use that were collected after the escape. Those were all listed, and those, we've seen pictures of them. So
Yep.
they're not with what is listed is not being withheld. Now, does that mean it's still there and they're hiding it? I can't say.
Well, all I can say is that one, the very reputable Alcatraz historian, Michael Essinger, told me that he saw it at the archives.
He saw what?
He saw the pouch along with all of the photos. He said it was there. Even Art Roderick told me one time that it was there. Now, what happened to it? Did they lose it? They just not telling us the truth about it? I don't know. The strange thing too about the pouch and the contents is that if you go and you look in the FBI files, those 17 volumes, close to the end, they have almost one volume that is dedicated to nothing but photos of all of the evidence that they found, all the items in the water, like the paddle, the vest, the raft that they found on top of the cell house, all the items that they found that they were working on, all the items within the cell, in the cells and everything. They never once photographed the pouch nor any of the contents. It is not in any of the FBI files. Mm. So why would they photograph everything else if it's evidence, but yet this one piece has never been photographed?
Well, what they do include, and we've mentioned this before, is no photos is true, but they do itemize everything that were in the pouch, and they give little brief descriptions of each item. There's about 70 or 80 of them altogether.
But everything else has been photographed. But the pouch itself has never been photographed. Or at least it's not in the FBI files released to the public, nor any of the photos, nor any of the other contents to it.
Yeah.
So one has to draw a conclusion is that there's something about that they don't want out. And I swear you can, how would you show those photos as evidence or those letters when clearly you can go and look and see the photo that was taken of John's cell the next morning, and all of those letters are sitting in his cell. Yeah. How did all of those letters in his cell the next morning wind up in the bay? He clearly didn't take him with him.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of letters. That thing, that stack is, it's like that thick. It's a very thick stack of letters. You can't miss it in the photograph.
No. And as well as I know that if someone writes you a letter, especially with Clarence, one of the items that they found in that pouch was a receipt where my grandmother, when she would send them money whenever she could, she sent him, undoubtedly must have sent, in fact, I think I even remember Clarence thanking her in one of the letters. She sent him $5, and whenever it comes, to the prison, they take the money, deposit it into the account, and then they would probably stick into the letter the receipt. So the receipt, that's not something that Clarence would have taken with him and said, "Oh, I got to have this. This is important information."
Yeah.
It's stuck inside of one of those letters, and they find that in the bay. And just like all of the photos were probably inside of each one of those letters. And whoever grabbed those letters and said, we want to throw these into the bay to make it look like they drowned, all of those photos were inside those letters, winds up into the bay. And that's the reason why they find photos.
Yeah. I just don't.
Along with the letters.
To me, the logic of them just quickly trying to cover up the escape initially to make it look like they died in the water when they didn't have all the information yet. It was almost like, why would they want to do that? Why wouldn't they, it's like,
well, James Bennett,
like, just to kind of parallel, the young man, the 26-year-old who shot the United Healthcare CEO. I mean, they put his information out there very quickly. Just the same with the escape that happened up in upstate New York at forget the name of the prison, but they put their information out there very quickly. It's just like, they didn't say that they said they're at large and like that, and they put it out there in the news and stuff like that. I just don't understand what the rationale was to not put a blanket, thing and just continue to look for them unless they didn't want to find them.
Exactly. Well, it's just like, the very first time that it's ever mentioned about them drowning, that they probably drowned, was Bennett, James Bennett, director of the Federal Bureau of Prisons at the time. Right after they found the pouch, I mean, the day after they found the pouch, he's the one who started off saying they probably drowned because this was an important piece of item and they would not have lost it if something hadn't happened. So we believe they drowned. They started forming the hypothesis, the theory that they drowned based upon that pouch. Solely based upon the pouch, nothing else. Not based upon, we found the paddle or we found the life preserver. It was based upon the pouch. For whatever reason, they used that as the reason as to why they say they drowned. I have challenged people before that I've had debates with. Tell me one piece of evidence that they found that would indicate that they drowned.
Yeah.
That's the only thing that they ever used.
And
now we know that it was in their cell the next morning, which means they didn't take them with them.
No.
It was planted.
It was planted. Yeah.
So if it was planted, why are they trying to do this? There's got to be something else they don't want out.
Did Art ever see? I'm sure you shared all the Whitey Bulger letters with him.
I did.
Yeah. What was his take on that?
Well, I never shared all the content with him. He knew I'd been corresponding with him.
But you just told him that what you've been talking to him about.
Some, not everything. He just said, he would, even like today, you talk about Johnny Clarence, he's very vague. He never really would say anything about Whitey other than, he was a criminal. You can't believe anything he says. He's just talking to cover his own self, things like that. So
to me, it's just, why did he participate in the documentary then, if that's the way he felt?
I really felt like that Art, when I first met him, the very first time in Seattle, I really felt like he was genuine. He wanted to solve this case throughout the shoot that we were doing. I felt like he really wanted to be involved in it. Then when we showed him that photo of them in 1975, I could truly see the shock in his eye. And I was like, okay, Art's on board, and the documentary comes out, it was a big hit. And then Marshall Dykes started questioning the 75 photo of them, saying, that's not them. I measured Clarence's arm and it doesn't match up to another photo. And so then Art all of a sudden started going, yeah, we don't believe it's them. And I was like, what do you mean you don't believe it's them? You're the one who hired Michael Streed that works for the U.S. Marshal. You're the one who hired him, and he's the one who positively identified him. I didn't hire him. I didn't even know who he was.
Exactly.
And so now, and I kept going back to Art. Art kept going, well, people can get it wrong. And I said, wait a minute, Art, are you telling me that Michael Street, the one that teaches at your academy, got it wrong? Is that what you're telling me? And he would go, well, I'm just saying there's other ways of looking at stuff. I was like, he never would throw Michael under the bus because he's law enforcement. But
did you ever tell him that Whitey identified them in the photo as well?
Yes. He doesn't want to believe anything other than what undoubtedly somebody told him. Either he's backing up his other, U.S. Marshal buddy, or someone has come to him and said, listen, do not agree with this.
Yeah.
That's the only thing I can think of, because he has told me before.
To me, I still don't get it. I mean, what could possibly be in Pandora's box in this case?
Got to be, I swear, I think we're going to find out one day, it is somehow tied to the JFK files. I don't know exactly how. I can't tell you for a fact that I know what it is, other than the common link is Mickey Cohen.
Yeah.
Mickey Cohen being involved with the escape from Alcatraz, and also possibly somehow connected with the JFK, along with Chief Justice Earl Warren.
Yeah.
He's another factor in this thing. He's the one who works with Mickey Cohen to get out of prison, and he's also the one who works and writing the document on the JFK assassination. If you wanted to cover yourself, you've got the perfect person, because he wrote the Warren Commission and pretty much put a bed to any conspiracy theory about, there's other people involved. I mean, He wouldn't even listen to anything.
Mike, what do you think about that? I mean, I'm sitting here, you're kind of glazed over there. You're just kind of like...
It sounds reasonable. The pieces all line up together, but it's all conjecture. So
what's conjecture?
Ken does bring out a good point about, something from so long ago. What is there to be afraid of to not just release everything? Here are the files, here are the document, here's all your family stuff back. We don't need it anymore. This is a dead case. They're most likely passed away long ago, years ago, most likely. So why keep all this stuff? Why withhold it? Why resist? Unless there's something there. I mean, it's reasonable to assume there's something there that is explosive, that is very embarrassing to somebody or some administration. But it's all, we don't know for a fact. It's reasonable to conclude that, but there's right now we don't have the evidence, just suspicions.
Yeah, but it's like 60 plus years ago. It's just like the government has had so many more embarrassing moments since then. I agree. Just to talk to.
I wish I could go to the FBI office or the U.S. Marshal's office in San Francisco and just say, just give me everything you got. I'll take it, and they won't do that, of course, but I wish I could.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, even if they, that's the whole thing. It's always they always say no in the beginning. And so you keep on pushing and pushing and pushing, and hopefully something will come of it.
Well, usually what happens is, I can't remember specifically what happened, but there was something that was kind of an embarrassing thing that happened, and it was getting no traction. And then the media got a hold of it, exposed what was going on. Then all of a sudden, very quickly, it was resolved because of you're shining a light on it. And that's usually what happens is when the stonewalling happens and there's no good reason to withhold something, or an injustice was taking place, like your friend, who was in jail for all those years, and then finally somebody shined a light on it and there was all this heat, then all of a sudden he gets exonerated because they realized this guy was railroaded, that there was corruption involved.
Yeah.
And because somebody was in a position who knew people who were willing to go along with it for whatever he did to motivate them to basically send an innocent man to prison, you shine a light, and now he's out. And now this guy is saying he's training other people to do what happened, to get other people out who are also railroaded. So it seems, Ken himself, even with the help of congressmen, can't do it, but there are other things that can happen. And maybe this is our little band here could be the ones to make it happen as we we're shining a light on this.
Yeah. I think after, January 20th, I think that's when we kind of reapproach them all and then, start, see what we can do, because it's
I had already planned to write another letter once the new administration gets in. But for some reason, I can't get the current one to respond. So,
well, they're right now. It's just like they're counting the days.
Yeah,
just kind of drifting right now.
And I really I was going to try to reach out to the U.S. head of the U.S. Marshals through another U.S. Marshal that was going to help me get there, but he's probably going to be replaced at some point in time. Also with the new administration.
Yeah, you don't know.
He was assigned by the current president, and I just can't believe that they're not going to kind of clean house.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of that, but hopefully, there's more transparency. I mean, because like I said,
I sure hope so.
This is ridiculous, especially something like this that has no bearing on anything,
national security or anything.
Well, and one of the things that, we're seeing in the news right now with what happened in Syria, you have Assad, who's been in power. His family's been in power for over 50 years, running the country as he saw fit. And he had the support of Iran and Russia, or Russia, no more Soviet Union.
Yeah.
And then because of other things going on, they pulled their support, and his administration crumbled. There was a civil war for years and years, and then in a week and a half, he's gone, and everyone's taken. These insurgents have taken over. All these people have been released from prison. All the things all the secret things they were doing. This is all going to be released. It's all going to be exposed.
I know.
It's going to be a floodgate of horrible things that happen there. And I'm not saying that's the same thing here, but you have an administration, you have people in positions of authority who are resisting any kind of release of information, or very little release of information. And then now we're going to have a new administration, and hopefully it'll be the same kind of an effect, that the resistance is gone because you have new people in place who are not toeing the line of the old guard. It'll be the new guard, and they'll be like, what's the big deal here? Here, take it. We don't care about this stuff. It's so old. Hopefully that'll
they're already tearing through all the secret prisons and letting out the political prisoners, and they're going through all these the hidden like labyrinth of vaults and subterranean places. That I saw a video yesterday. The guy was walking through it. It was like huge, and it was like a whole city underneath the ground that escape places and stuff. It's going to be it's going to be a power vacuum. Who knows who's going to come out with that information? And I'm sure our government's trying to keep a lid on some of that as well, because I'm sure, during this whole war on terror, I mean, they've had to, be, friendly with enemies and, all that kind of stuff. It's going to be a mess.
It is.
Yeah. But just like, Cuba kind of crumbled after Soviet pulled all their aid, same thing happened with Syria. Very similar. They crumble. Iran and Russia, that was it, and that's what that was the only thing protecting him. Now he's in Russia, living in Moscow in a condo.
So I'm hoping the same thing happens with this. Like I said,
Yes.
You have new administration, new people in positions of authority, and they're not going to have the same allegiance to what preceded them. And then we make our request. We kind of make some noise, rattle some chains, and then hopefully they'll be like, yeah, sure, you can have it. Yeah, we don't want this anymore. It's not a big deal.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, maybe with the new FBI director, we can petition him, and he can at least, if he won't close it or give us the items back, maybe he'll at least let us see them.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, guys, we got a lot of work ahead of us. I thought we were just sitting there, but it seems like the more we dig in, the more work we have. So
Totally agree.
All right. Well, we'll see you next week.